Late night talking under moon.
Hey, what's up, fam?
What's up, fam?
Hey, just keeping it real with Charles and
Melendia.
Yep. Hey, we're glad you joined us today for this Thursday's dose
Yes.
of Just Keeping It Real with Charles and Melendia. So today we're going to dive deep into an emotional topic, and we're going to talk about why men and women walk away from relationships. And that happens at times where they may even love you, but the things that you're doing could be enough to cause them to walk.
Yeah, and we're going to let this be a real conversation, right? I mean, have you ever asked yourself, why do people leave? Or
Oh yeah.
why am I thinking about leaving? Because you may be considering leaving. So we're going to break down some reasons for both why men and why women may want or will leave.
Okay, and some of these reasons are actually going to kind of overlay, or they're going to cross the line, because it can be common for men and women to leave for some of the same reasons. So if we touch your number, all we ask is that you either raise your hand or you say, ooh, ouch, or something, or make a comment down to let us know you're with us. And even if you felt that, because I know we have in our relationship felt some of the reasoning here that we're going to discuss. So if you're ready, we're ready to get in it. Okay. All right. So reason number one.
Yeah. I would say one first reason would be a lack of respect.
Okay. And this is common with men because the thing is said that with men, how we process that we will go where we're respected more than where we're so-called loved and disrespected. So in that's the foundation for a man in particular. And we feel if we feel like we're being constantly belittled or nagged or whatever it is, then guess what? It might cause us to take a walk. And that's the thing. So I want to say something too when it comes down to that. If you don't mind me talking about my past here, before marrying this beautiful lady here or meeting her, there was a young lady that I was, basically I would say I was really considering probably marrying at some point in the future from high school. And she and I had a serious conversation because now we're at that point, we finished high school, we're finishing, and then let's think about future, And as we had a conversation there were some things I mentioned to her that didn't quite line up. And when I start reading from the Bible, she says to me, "Oh, so now you're preaching to me?" And I was like, "Whoa." And I say, "You know what? I don't like the tone of that. And I don't think I could be with a woman or a wife to do that if we're going to talk about spiritual things or that." So I said, "Hey, let's just be friends at this point." Now, I don't know whether maybe I walked too fast, somebody may say, but I knew early on that the lack of respect was a reason for me saying, let's be friends. Okay.
I guess from a woman's perspective, we could feel the lack of respect as well, right? So I guess I've been in situations where I have felt not as respected. It could be either in our conversations when we're communicating with each other.
Okay.
And the response that I get.
So you're saying for me, is what you're saying?
I mean, let's be talking.
Oh, I didn't know you were talking about me. I'm just saying.
Talking to me like that. I'm talking about when you're in a marriage or in a relationship. And granted, it hadn't gotten to the point where I felt like I was going to leave because of it. But
tell me if you got there.
Yeah.
Because we have to have a serious conversation.
We have to have a conversation.
Okay, all right.
But,
all right, we good.
I think we have had conversations where I may have said I don't feel respected.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So identifying that is important.
Sure.
So, just like men may not feel the respect for the women, as he mentioned, women could feel disrespected as well.
Absolutely.
And it's mainly when they don't feel heard or they feel belittled.
Okay.
Or talked down to in that type of
forgive me,
sense.
honey.
You forgive
me. Really. as they say, I'm praying that God work on me and he work on us.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
Definitely.
Yep.
Okay.
Mhm.
So, all right. So, with that, we're going to talk about another one, as far as unmet physical needs.
Mhm.
And everybody know what we mean there. Whether when it comes down to physical intimacy, for men in particular, is often tied to our emotional validation. Because one thing they say about us is that usually we don't have to have an emotional validation in order to have physical intimacy.
Mhm.
I'm not saying like at the drop of a dime, a brother ready, but to a degree, we kind of like that even without emotion. But when intimacy becomes infrequent or used as a weapon, meaning that, okay, since you didn't do this or that, ain't nothing happened tonight. If it's used in that manner, then these are some of the ways for a man to feel like, okay, I guess you don't want me. And then he may start thinking, well, somebody else may want me, and maybe this is my time to exit.
Mm.
But I'm going to say be cautious. That can happen also with women as well.
Yeah. So, women may feel where um sometimes a man may work a lot, so he gives his attention to his work.
Mhm.
Or into sports or whatever it is, and not giving the attention to his wife or his woman.
Mhm.
And we don't necessarily have that problem, but I'm saying where if my if a female, if a woman's needs are not being met or catered to,
Sure.
then we have to understand it's not always physical though,
Yes, right. Mhm.
because
Right.
there's circumstances and situations that may hinder that.
Right. We're talking about health conditions. It could be something to hinder, or as you say, or to cause a breach or things to slow down. So with that, we have had challenges like that throughout our years. And then two, is that a reason to leave? If that's some of the thing we know that it happens, people have left folk that actually have health issues.
Yeah. So, I mean, we say we have had issues like this. Is maybe, he has gotten hurt, or after I've had a baby, or things like that. So, certain physical intimacies are not there.
Sure.
And, just a quick snippet, I
Okay, go
know
ahead.
someone personally who have gone through situations where they were dealing with medical situations,
Mhm.
and that part of the intimacy wasn't there. So the physical intimacy wasn't there because of the illness. And guess what? He left. So I know this personally because it had ran in my family a little bit. So that is that a reason to leave? Absolutely not. So that's where we have that emotional disconnection
Mhm.
that needs to be worked on.
Yeah, and definitely a conversation need to be had, really in that. How do we resolve the issue when we go through?
Mhm,
Okay.
mhm, mhm.
So another reason.
Constant conflict,
Okay.
constant conflict, arguing,
Sure.
fussing, and fighting, and things like that, which can also come into another reason when it comes to physical, you
Mhm.
know, fighting and things like that. But unresolved arguments and
Okay.
constantly having tension
Sure.
against each other. I think that goes both for men and women.
Yeah. Yeah. I think both would definitely apply.
Mhm.
Right.
And where they say when one shuts down,
Hmm.
when you shut down and you don't communicate and you don't talk about the problems, then I say that's when the devil sits there and wait for that opportunity.
Sure. And and I've known couples that may go a week or up to 2 weeks with giving each other silent treatment, one or the other. So
Mhm.
that's one of the things there is that these are how the enemy takes advantage of us in our relationship. So we going being silent to each other, not even talking. And I know sometimes we've had our issues where it's probably best not to say anything to each other because we know at that moment, but at some point in time we got to come together, and it's got to be less than a week or two. It's got to be that. You
Oh,
know
it's
what I'm
got to be
saying?
in the
Yeah,
day,
hopefully in the
within the
day. Yeah,
day,
hopefully it is.
within the
Yes.
day. I
Right.
mean,
Uh-huh.
it may linger on for a day or two, but not that whole day you're not
Right.
saying anything
And
because
especially, I'm sorry, going to bed.
Yeah.
We don't want to take that to bed. And I know times it's so easy to do, but again, we ought not let the sun go down on our wrath.
Right.
Mhm.
And it also got to think about bottled conflict is not a resolution either. You
Mhm.
just, well, we're just not going to talk about it. Because, I've heard of some people, they don't fight, they don't argue.
Sure.
So that's maybe
That's
not necessarily
Mhm.
the remedy
That's a rare.
for
Right.
it's rare. If somebody got some bottled up tension,
Mhm.
that's going to explode eventually.
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe some people don't.
Okay.
We just don't
I don't
waste
know
our time
everybody,
arguing.
but I do know
That's rare.
that
I can tell you.
when you bottle it up long enough, it's going to come out some kind of way.
Mhm.
Emotionally, it could even come out physically.
Well,
So
and yeah, I definitely hope not, but that
Yeah.
is a possibility.
yeah,
So one of the others we're going to talk about is basically one of the reasons of a spouse or another feeling significant other could feel control. Like I just don't feel like I'm free. You're controlling me, or you kind of got me under your finger, under your foot, under your thumb, however it is. So, men, we do value our freedom. I think women do too. I don't think it's just one of those things. So when we feel like we're being micromanaged, manipulated, or whatever, sometimes men won't. It's just the
Mhm.
fact of, hey, do this, and you feel like in doing whatever. And I know sometimes I've felt a little bit of that if I'm asked to do something and then there are instructions following that on how to do it, like I can't think. And I have to remind people sometimes that God gave me a brain too. Whoop-de-doo. I can use it. So with that, but that can be an issue there.
Yeah.
And we talk about that at
Yeah.
times.
But
Yeah.
if and,
But I
and
love you, girl.
I love you too.
Okay.
But on for a woman, sisters, y'all know what I'm saying. Sometimes you just like, I've asked you, so that when he said it comes after the instruction, I get it, I understand, and we have to have our patience when we work with that, right? So I guess feeling, my response to that, as far as women feeling controlled, is usually when they don't have the freedom to be able to express themselves, or being controlled of what to say, how to say it, how they should look, what they should wear, things like that. When they feel like they're being put in a box,
So
even if your man have an opinion about certain um things like that, like what you should wear and how you should look. It is an appropriate way of saying it. It really is an appropriate way of saying it. If it's out of jealousy, if it's out of anger, if it's out of disgust or something like that, those things should be talked about.
Sure.
But it shouldn't be in a reprimand, like the woman is a child or anything like that. I think it should be, earlier in our relationship. Earlier,
I think it was coming, yeah.
in our relationship,
Yeah.
I had, and these were when we were talking about before, in those first 5 years.
First 5, and then plus a few more years after that too.
Yeah, because you're getting to know each other, and you're getting to see how one respects and responds to the other. So then it becomes where you feel like you're being controlled by what the person is saying, and you don't have the freedom of. I mean, I even have heard some people of how he wants her to wear her hair, or certain shoes. So then it becomes a controlled mechanism.
Is that? I mean,
No,
could he not have a desire for his wife though? Does it have to be control?
Well, you know what?
If honey, could you wear the black shoes today? Is that control, or is that desire? So something that we've got to learn to split the difference and actually know what's happening. Because a man may want to see his wife in certain things. Honey, I like that on you.
And
I love that on you. Well, that's controlling.
No.
Okay.
No. I don't take that one as control.
Okay, we got you.
As I said in the beginning, I'm gonna go back. It is a way that you communicate what you desire from your woman. It's the way that that's the way
to communicate.
Baby, you look so. You could say, like, baby, you look so sexy in those black shoes.
Okay.
And even more, I will buy you something that I really like for you to wear.
Okay.
Something like that, right? So, or same with the woman.
Sure.
You say,
Right.
you know, I
Same,
don't,
yeah,
you
right,
know,
to them.
same with the woman. If it's a
Mhm.
pair of pants you don't particularly care that he wears, I mean, if you have it to be able to contribute to his wardrobe,
Mhm.
then
Okay.
you should help with that.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
All right. We'll go there.
yeah.
And we'll work on that too,
Yeah.
still. Because
Mhm.
again, our marriage is a marriage in works. I mean, and we talk about some of those things. We want to be transparent and, like as we say, keep it real about these issues, because it's not that we've surpassed everything or we're there, but we just want to share. And if there's something that we may be guilty of or we're working through now, then that's the thing. Let's work through it together.
Mhm.
We'll get
Mhm.
there. Okay.
And then,
Okay.
okay, so the next one that we can say could be a reason
Sure.
is financial troubles,
Okay.
financial pressure,
Oh, absolutely.
financial disrespect.
Mhm.
And if you don't mind, I'm gonna say it from the woman's perspective
Sure.
first, and that when the woman tends to feel um they don't they don't feel that they're being taken care of,
Mm-hmm.
you know, especially if the woman is not working.
Okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
And certain things, and if the man is being neglectful or not responsible and taking care of the household,
Mm-hmm.
then the woman don't feel like they are protected.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And after a while and talking, you know, talking through that, it gets frustrating.
Sure. Sure.
And that could give a way for, I can do, you know, that saying, I can do bad all by myself.
Yeah.
You know, so that can be a big enough pressure that the pressure cooker will pop and they will leave.
Okay. So, and I know we've gone through our, through our 40, almost 40 years, we've had challenges, financially. We've had some decent times financially. So that's just part of the, you can say, the terrain to that degree.
Mhm.
And yet, but working together and working through those things is very important. So, one other thing we look at is definitely the emotional abuse, or we could say even manipulation. Um, and I guess what some say, what is that? Well, we hear the term gaslighting pretty often now,
Mhm.
and even with being what they call the passive aggression,
Mhm.
that takes place even with withdrawing emotionally,
Mhm.
can be just as damaging, to a person. That can male or female,
Right.
as physical abuse can,
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
these are some of the things, people, hey, I'm going through, because again, you may not have to even put your hands on a person, but the words that you say have power. They have
Mhm.
power, and they speak life, or they can speak the opposite.
Mhm.
So definitely very important.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
So the next one,
Go ahead.
I
Go ahead.
can share is maybe unresolved past trauma.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
You
Right.
know, if there's trauma that that is causing a friction in the marriage based on whatever's happened before they got married,
Sure.
and
Right.
if it's not
Right.
resolved, or they don't seek the counsel that they need,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't talk about these things, that's
Yes.
why it's
Right.
important to have an understanding prior to that unity.
Right. Some of the questions I ask before you say I do, as
Right.
we talk about. I'm sorry. Go
Yeah,
ahead. Mm-hmm.
could cause such a strain on a marriage that
Mhm.
one or the other would or could leave.
So, in other words, just summarizing on what's being said, I want to kind of give a couple scenarios here. Matter of fact, one brother and I, we had discussion about the same thing here just last week, and the thing we talked about in that is, oh, maybe 2 weeks ago, was the fact of, I remember again, and not that I was dating so many girls or anything, but I do remember being in a relationship, and the young lady had said to me that she was younger than I was, but she said, "Oh yeah, I'm ready to get married." She was in a household where there was alcohol, among several members, and she just said, "I'm ready to get out of this hellhole." And she said, "I want to get married and do whatever, get out of here." And it sounded more like, I'm looking for a rescue. That's what it sounded to me. And at the time, I said, "Oh no," I say, "I'm too young for marriage, and you are too, because you're younger than I am." And she said, "No, I'm not. I'm ready for marriage." So I said, "Well, I know with me, I'm not. So won't be with me. So that's the thing. And that wasn't the answer to her thing, was that what she dealt with there. And see, even that same spirit ended up she dealt with later in life. So now my point is in that I'm not wishing anything, but if you don't get the help you need even before marriage, marriage is not the answer. So if you got something going on, we suggest that you get the counseling, and we do say spiritual based counseling as well as biblically based, the counseling that you need to get in this life, because you don't want to take these issues in a marriage, because if you do, men rescuing a woman through marriage is not the answer. Only thing you're going to do is get problems later in most cases. And women getting into marriage with a man that had issues, that will not solve the thing. So we said before, your stuff, your thing ain't enough to make a change in somebody's life when it comes to mental health.
Yeah, that's facts. That's facts, fam. So that's a rough one right there. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Let's keep going.
And we've discussed this next one before in other podcasts, but having a divided or non-shared vision.
Okay, right.
You know, when somebody is constantly doing something different.
Sure.
You know, somebody could decide, I'm not doing this because they're not on the same plane as I am.
And these, as we talk, are the things that ought to be talked about before you say I do. But some people go in and then they start laying the cards out, and they started evaluating or analyzing and see that, whoa, we're not even in the same book talking about the same page, you know? So then that's the thing about this, where you hear people use the term irreconcilable differences and all, with the reason that's just a lack of vision. We don't see things the same. And when you have more than one vision, what is it called?
Division.
A divided vision. There it is. So we got two different visions, right?
Right.
Yeah. So definitely.
Yeah. So the next one I can say is, we talk about this as well, is lack of communication.
Lack of communication.
You know,
oh boy. Yeah.
That's a big one right there.
Yeah, I'm sorry. But that's been one of the big things they've been talking about. One of the number one reasons people split up is because lack of communication gets there. And you know what I said though a while back? I said, I'm not sure whether it's the lack of communication or not, or whether it's the lack of positive communication, because we could be communicating and our communication can be totally negative. Though we communicated, we understand, but it's negative communication. So I would say the lack of positive communication is what breaks us up a lot of times. Go ahead.
I heard somebody, I think I had something out there on social media, somebody say it's not so much communication, which I don't necessarily agree.
Go ahead, finish.
It's not so much communication, it's the responsibility of the person to understand what's being communicated.
Okay.
And so, but in order, and I guess what's being said is, because you didn't understand, because you can communicate all you want and they don't understand what you're saying, then it's not, and I said necessarily I agree.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
So they were trying to put an argument of, well, I'm communicating, but it's not I'm not the problem.
Well,
because
see,
I'm trying to
I'm sorry.
Communicate to the
excited.
person. I know.
Yeah.
I'm trying to communicate to the person, but they don't understand what I'm saying.
Right. Well, you know, what we talked about when we talked about communication is that, what is communication? It is having a sender and a receiver to basically those messages sent and they're received. So if something is being sent and not received and quite understood, then there is a responsibility on your end to get it right. Get it, try to change it so the person may understand, try to simplify. You can't just say, hey, I said it, it's up to you to get it. No. And we talked about that's how we in America, how we think, but we compared it to the Japanese, is that they feel like this. If you didn't understand it, then the problem or the responsibility is on me to deliver it better, not on you to get it better. So we need to take a different approach with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
go ahead.
when we're not communicating effectively, and it goes on for long periods of time, then they're going to feel one or the other, that they can communicate to somebody else better. And then they will wind up looking somewhere else.
Yeah.
So,
Well, my point is, but let's use some common sense and wisdom in that. My love, Melinda, if you and I are communicating or talking, if I don't get it, do you think me going somewhere else causes you to get it?
no.
Okay, so let's be sensible about that. And that's one thing I can understand. If you got problems at home, even when it comes down to intimacy, why am I telling somebody else about the intimacy between my wife? I need to talk to her.
Yeah.
And you need to talk to him and not anybody else.
Yeah.
So we include other people. That's where we go wrong. Okay.
Yeah. So
all
communication is a big one. Yeah,
Yep,
we
definitely.
that is it's a big one. So the next one is a big one as well, and that's infidelity.
Infidelity.
Now we have people, women and men, who will forgive the one that has been betrayed.
Sure. Right.
Who has betrayed them. They will forgive. But understand it can be forgiven. And it can be worked through as long as the two of you can rebuild that trust, which is going to be the hardest part.
That's the thing.
Because the trust has been broken, which is which is something that has to be rebuilt.
Sure. And for the most part, I'm not trying to, put down brothers, but in most cases, what I've seen over the years is that men tend to be, well, if they are forgiving when it comes down, they're not receptive. Mean, I forgive you, but I'm not going to receive you back. That's a rare for men. Usually women tend to be the ones to do that in most cases. I'm not saying every case, because men and women are different, period. But I'm just saying overall with men. And I guess it's just the fact of the violation that men may feel in that situation more so, but anyway. Okay.
Yeah.
So, what about, one of the other ones is abuse. And we're talking now, we talked about emotional here, but we want to talk about in any way, especially physical. We talked about emotional already, but when it comes down to physical abuse, and we shared in our story from the other week where we talked about our in pre-engagement, our engagement to the first 5 years, and we went into marriage doing some things where we were actually, tapping and doing stupid stuff, with our hands with each other, and but on the lines of abuse, we didn't hurt each other per se, but it shouldn't have been happening. So, and I've seen a case, with a loved one, family member that was actually went through abuse with a spouse early on. And that was something that I witnessed at a young age, and I really hated that and say I would never do it. But I got involved doing this stuff, and I just said, Lord, help me.
So that was the reason to leave.
And that eventually that happened after years of getting abused. And I just think sometimes that it wears on the mental. And that it can leave scars that are permanently there. And I think if a person has gone through that mental, physical abuse, emotional abuse, then I think that at some point you may want to get, again, spiritually based or biblically based counseling as well to get over that, because that does something to someone.
Yeah. And just know, abuse is a relationship killer.
Oh, yeah.
Period.
Right.
That it's out. And that should be no compromise with that.
And we don't want
abuse should not be tolerated.
And we don't want that to be your demise.
Right.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I would say one of the biggies, just like I say in the one that I talk about, the abuse that was happening. Guess what? It was happening because of addiction. Okay. So which is common, whether that's through drug, alcohol, whatever kind of addiction is, whether it's eating or whatever it is. Sometimes addictions can cause issues to make a person leave. Okay. And the thing is, even we talk about mental illness is a real thing. Okay. And there are cases that you may know, and I know even experiencing some things and with family, we all have seen it. Mental illness may run in every family in some way or another, but even to experience things that you look at with couples that have been, well, they're married for years and maybe even in older age, and you may experience things like, dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, several things that affect the brain, that changes can come about in the whole dynamic of the relationship and make a person want to leave. Person could become delusional, accusations, and just to hear that all day long or constantly make a person want to say, I'm going to the store to grab
It's not
a
funny,
loaf
but
of bread and milk.
yeah,
I'll see you.
yeah.
You know,
That's when
but go ahead.
I'm
Go ahead.
thinking that's when help is being sought
Sure,
consistently.
sure, right.
But
And you
yet,
have to.
but yet you're not getting any kind of resolution or
Sure.
some kind of help, things like that. The weight can become so heavy
Yes, yes.
to carry
For the
that.
caregiver
Mhm.
and other family members as well.
Yeah.
It can be.
Yeah.
Yes.
And unfortunately, you don't want to get to a situation where you have to leave, but it's always understand that those are some of the reasons why some people do leave.
Yeah, and because just like you don't know certain conditions that people may make threats or become physical and may, if you stay, it may be life threatening to you. So it may be better to leave in some cases or get the help that you need.
Right.
So there again, you have to determine those situations. Okay. All right. Okay. Go ahead.
I would say the next one for me, I would say would be someone that is over dependent and don't have their own dependency,
Okay.
And it's either, if I'm so clingy to you and don't allow you to have your own outside dependence, being able to, if you have your friends or if you go out with your dad or things like that, and your clinginess, that clinginess or always having to feel like you're pouring in so much to me because in order to satisfy me.
Okay.
So the over dependence that is not here because we both have our what you both have your relaxation to get out and to have a moment away from each other.
Yeah. And it's well needed. So I guess with that, as you say, clinginess or whatever, or you don't want, a person to have space outside of you, then that could be a problem, and actually run people off. And you know what? I hear a lot of like actors, celebrities. I hear sometimes I've listened to interviews and a lot of these folks, actors, singers, musicians, a lot of times they say things like, hey, I want my, partner, whatever, to have their own, whether career or own thing. I don't want them just to rely on me. I want them to be involved. And I hear that often.
Yeah.
So I can understand that.
Yeah, and supporting each other would be,
sure.
the answer to that.
Sure, definitely. All right. So you mentioned about one person always giving and the other one's always taking. Yeah.
Right.
So, and if that's the case, eventually the pouring may slow down and probably stop altogether.
Yeah.
So, all right. So these are not the only reasons. These are ones that we want to share with you. And if you're doing these things, it's like we were honest enough to say that we are. On some of these, we are guilty on some of these, and we're saying, Lord, help us to get to a point where this is behind us, and we are considerate of how we make the other feel, and that we can have a conversation. Don't just up and leave me, woman. You better talk to me. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Let's have a conversation. And see, and I want to do the same. If I feel like, hey, if this woman nagged me one more time, I'm about to head out the door. Got my suitcase packed, already in the car. I'm waiting. Is she coming? Oh, but no. Let's have a conversation first before we take these kind of actions. And again, if you don't resolve issues, all what we say is that get the help you need from an unbiased source of someone that has a biblical foundation or spiritual foundation to help you get through.
Yeah, and know that these aren't just reasons. They could be warning signs for you to be aware to start working to turn that situation around.
Yeah.
You know, so let's keep it real. Let's keep it better.
Sure.
You know,
Right.
that to build better. You know, we want to prevent these situations to get to leaving.
Right.
And we want you to understand why. You know, have a why. Why am I thinking this way? Why am I doing this way? Why do I feel this way? And talk about it, talk through it.
And as you say, these aren't just reasons, they are warnings. So if you see any of these warnings in your relationship, then let's do something about it. Again, we want to build better with you, our community. So drop us a note, give us comments, because we want to grow with you. And again, we talked about our 40th celebration that we're going to be coming up. We will announce our date, and we want your face in the place. It's going to be a virtual event, and we are working on it, and we want you there, and we want you involved. You know, we're talking giveaways. We're talking some games. Yeah, definitely. Music, laughter,
and dancing, and fun. This is just. So come celebrate with us.
That's what we want.
Right?
Yes.
And don't forget to send in your anniversary date, because we want to have a shout out for all of you all.
One thing I want to do right now, though he did not send me anything, I want to shout out my good friend and his wife, Charles and Beverly Staten. I think it's 44 years, if I'm not mistaken, in marriage. And I think it was last week. We want to shout you out, my brother, and your family.
Yes.
And we say congrats. And we know we're going to say this much: keep fighting the fight of faith, like you always say, and keep this thing real, my brother. I love you all.
So don't forget, also, we got some swag. We got some apparel out there. So, but just keeping it real with Charles and Melendia. So check out the website that we will put in the link.
Yes.
And we also put in the email for you to send in your anniversary dates.
And two, if you purchase any of our merch, we want to say that we do send a portion to St. Jude's as well, because again, having a child with special needs, that's touched our heart. So we have contributed to them for several years, and we want to continue that. And when you share and help us, we want to help them as well. Because again, one thing we do like the motto that a parent, one thing, they never see a bill at all. So that's one thing. We want to continue to support that effort as well. So
thanks again for
Thursday Dose.
Dose.
Yes, right.
Until next time.
Just keep it real.
Bye.
All right. Later.